Hello, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here to do a quick video review of Tamron's new 18-200mm all-in-one zoom for a couple of mirrorless bodies, for the Sony E mount and then also for the Canon EOS M body, or an EF-M mount. This lens is exciting for a variety of reasons. First of all, of course, it has an outstanding over 11 times zoom range, going from wide angle 18mm all the way out to 200mm, and so that gives something particularly to EOS M users that they've not had, and that is both an all-in-one option and then also not hardly having a telephoto option. Canon did recently just release a 55-200mm telephoto lens, but for whatever reason chose to not distribute it in the United States. And so in one of the largest markets in the world, people don't even have the opportunity to purchase that lens in country. And so Tamron has jumped in and filled that niche with the lens that not only performs well on the wide end, but does a good job out on the long end as well. Now, this lens, it has a build quality that is good overall, and it has a nice construction. The focus ring is towards the rear, and it has a metal mount nicely constructed there. Towards the front of the lens, it has a nice wide ribbed zoom ring, and as you can see, this lens will extend to almost twice its length when it's fully extended out. Now, as a result, this lens, although it's not hefty and it's not particularly large in comparison to other lenses, I just recently reviewed both the 16-300 VC lens for the EF-S mount and then also the 28-300 VC lens from Tamron that's for full frame bodies. And so of course both of those lenses, which are highly similar in size, they're considerably larger than this one, but of course the EOS body is considerably smaller than the other bodies that those are designed for. So I would say that as far as weight and balance, this lens, it still does fine, but it's towards the outer edge of what I would call a kind of a reasonable limit for native lenses for this mount. And fortunately, the zoom action is quite smooth, and this is the second copy that I've reviewed. I had one copy that got damaged in transit, but I found the zoom range tighter on it. The zoom ring here is nice and smooth, which is good because and this doesn't have a great grip, and so you lack some of the same leverage for maneuvering. And so fortunately, the zoom action is nice and smooth on that. And it does come with the lens hood, which does a good job of protecting both the front element, which is a 62mm filter thread, kind of an uncommon size. The only other lens that I've had was actually another one from Tamron, which was their 70-300mm zoom. And the lens itself, it feels good mounted on the camera, and I found the lens to be good overall. There is, if I shake it, just a bit of an internal rattle, which was true for both of those, and it's obviously just a part of the design itself, but not something that I'm crazy about personally. And so looking at a few of the things that this lens excels at, obviously its focal range is fantastic, and Tamron has done a good job. Every time you have a lens that goes from wide angle to telephoto, there are obviously some optical compromises that have to be made to achieve that great zoom range. But I found with this entire series of new all-in-one zooms that Tamron has produced that they have done a great job of balancing the image quality and managed to mitigate a lot of the inherent shortcomings that come with that broad zoom range. I would say that this is actually closer, the image quality is closer to the 28-300, which I found to be slightly better than the 16-300 zoom for crop sensors, probably because that 16-300 has an over 18 times a zoom range, and so it obviously has a more extreme zoom range, and I felt like the optical compromises were a little greater with that. I've been actually really delighted with the image quality that comes from this. It also has Tamron's excellent VC built into it. Tamron, although it wasn't one of the first ones to the game with image stabilizers. It has done a fabulous job, and I really am impressed with every time that I've used a Tamron lens with their vibration compensation system. They really just lock things down and are very secure, and to me they're the finest systems that I have encountered when it comes to image stabilization. It has good build quality. Now let's talk about the AF and application. First of all, it has a stepping motor, much like the various other lens designs that come from Canon. And the stepping motor, it's not what they call their USM, but anyway, it locks on focus quite quickly, even at the longer end, and at shorter range it does an even quicker job. And so it locks on quickly. Now, I do find that if it's a situation where it's a low contrast and you're towards the telephoto end, there very possibly will be some hunting, and even I found that it has locked focus, say if I'm trying to isolate a bird in a tree and it's amongst a lot of foliage, it can be a bit of a challenge, and that's where you really miss a viewfinder. And so I find that that's not my favorite thing. And if you do have to switch to manual focus, for one thing, it's focused by wire like all of the stepping motors are. But the focus throw is huge on this lens, and so it seems to take forever if you have to manually focus. So don't go there if you don't have to. In most situations, the AF does a good job. The image quality, it's impressive for the focal range that this covers. It does a great job, and I've used it in a variety of settings. I've had it out on hikes and in the woods and shot some nature things with it. But then I've also used it in a series of board meetings where I was chronicling the events taking place in the boardroom, and it's amazing how great a job it did with great detail, and I'm actually very impressed with it. It does a good job wide, and it does a good job all the way out to the telephoto end. On the telephoto end, I think the image quality is just slightly degraded, maybe a little less contrast, but still it's very, very effective. And because of that, and its ability to focus very closely, you actually have a very strong maximum magnification on this lens that allows you to get kind of a pseudo macro performance. It focuses down to 1 to 3.7. That's about a 0.27 times magnification, which does a great job if you want to shoot flowers or insects up close. And so that's another nice plus for this. A list of the negatives here would include what I've already detailed regarding the AF performance. I also found that I didn't find the servo AF performance to be as good as my EFM lenses that I already own. And so if you're wanting to shoot a lot of video where you're wanting to do servo AF or capturing action, I wouldn't say that this lens excels in that department. As I've said, it's at the upper limit, although it still balances okay. It's at the upper limit of size and weight that can still balance appropriately on this EOS M body. There's some lack of micro contrast when images are viewed at high magnification. It's not in that upper tier of image quality, but the image quality is very good. And there are some chromatic aberrations. They're well controlled throughout a lot of the focal range. When you get towards the end of the focal range, you'll see them a bit more. Fortunately, chromatic aberrations, in my experience from this lens, are easily corrected in post. It also does have some fairly strong barrel distortion on the wide end, and I was able to correct it. There is already a profile in Lightroom for this, and surprisingly there's actually a profile in the EOS M body, and it recognizes it. And so because it recognizes it, it will give you a choice for it to correct both for the peripheral illumination or the vignetting, and also chromatic aberrations if you happen to be shooting in-camera JPEGs. And so I was very surprised to find that, but if you're shooting raw and you're doing your corrections in post, they were very easy to deal with. And so overall, this is a extremely useful lens. It covers so many great focal lengths. It's still compact enough that it's very easy to bring along, easy to drop in a little holster, or to carry along in a small camera bag, but it's going to cover just about all that you need to shoot. Now, one final thing that is certainly a negative, and that is that this is not a particularly fast lens when it comes to its aperture. It starts at f3.5 on the long end, but it's not very long at all before you're at f5.6, and then eventually it has on the longer end a maximum aperture of only f6.3. And so there's no fears about it autofocusing. It will autofocus on either the EOS M body or a Sony E mount. That's not a problem at all. However, just note that if you're in low light situations, you're either going to be needing the good effective image stabilizer, the VC system, or you're going to have to bump that ISO up. And so it's probably not a great lens if you're going to shoot indoor events, unless the lighting happens to be very good. But other than that very obvious shortcoming, which is a shortcoming that every all-in zoom or all-in-one zoom lens has, really it's a great option. And so if you've got a new either Sony body or an EOS M body and you would like to have an all-in-one solution or a great lens for travel, look no further. This is, at least for the EOS M body system, it is the only option of its kind, and fortunately it's a very effective option. And Sony does have a couple of choices, but I think you will find that at the price point, $499 for this lens, it will serve just about all of your needs in just about every situation. And so it gets a strong recommendation from me. If you would like to read more and to see a lot more sample photos, you can find a link to my website, dustinabbott.net, to the full written review that's there. If you haven't already, click like. I'll keep these videos coming and continue to do a series of lens reviews, equipment reviews moving ahead. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.